Good jokes. Maybe it's kind of needs to do a great reset. Yeah, Adam can do that. Hey, I didn't hear the joke. Yeah, I know. You can't hear anything. It's weird. I don't know why we can't hear anything. Shouldn't just like Shouldn't just decide to
crap out for no reason.
not transmit.
Oh, there we
audio.
go. No, now I think it's working.
Are we working now, guys?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
Back.
Yes, we're
Yeah.
back. Okay.
All right.
So as you were saying, no kings.
As we were saying,
No
this is
Kings
now the No Kings podcast.
Yes. Where we lobby for
No kings.
no kings and support Ukraine.
Yeah. No bombs against Iran, because all bombs should be against Russia.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, we'll just start off by saying we're titled the show today D-Day, Trump's D-Day, do or die, or is it do or do, or die, or there is no try, just do and die. Whatever. It's about as coherent as Trump's statements on the whole
It's
thing.
been so ridiculous.
He's it's kind of interesting because he's, historically quite rambly and, non sequitory and jumping from one thing to the next. And you can kind of roughly figure out what he's saying, if you listen to the context. But it's a boon for anybody wanting to take him out of context, because he just provides ample opportunity for these little snippets of one thing and then jumping to the next. But he's actually worse, it seems to me. And I think that's probably a sign of just, when he's telling the truth, he's discombobulated. So when he has to lie quite a lot, it seems it's a lot more discombobulated. That's despite the discombobulator existing. He's discombobulated. He is the discombobulator. So it's just interesting, to me that he's over the past while he's just been quite
I think
like off topic, rambling off topic, and he's always done that a bit, but we're just getting consistent same message over and over again. Obliterated, destroyed. He's like literally says the same thing over and over and over again. We took out 90% or whatever it is, 90 whatever percent.
We've won so big. We've obliterated them.
They're totally obliterated. They can't do anything. We can do whatever we want. Blah blah blah. And that's all. People have to understand. That's all 100% propaganda. I mean, this is very similar to like every other war. Basically, you can go back in history if you want, in modern history, and particularly American history, for example. Obviously, the first Iraq War, second Iraq War, but even before that, the Vietnam War. The US was winning bigly, obliterating all the Viet Cong were dying every day. That daily reports of how many were killed today, and then the what do you call it, the Tet Offensive happened, and suddenly it was like, oops, how do we spin this? But they just kept trying to spin it, and they were also lying about. You can look this up yourself. They were also lying about the number of American servicemen being killed and the number of planes being shot down, etc. None of that was happening at the time. So people need to understand that, as in any other war, while it's ongoing, all those things are going to be lied about. So when you hear that 6 or 12, or I don't know, is it still only 6?
15.
Dead?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think we're up to 15 official.
15 officially dead. You can probably multiply that by 10. At least. And then the injured equally so by 10, let's say. And there's probably quite a number of other incidents that have happened that have been covered up. There's a big question mark over, was it the Gerald Ford that had the fire, the laundry room fire, and so it was only in play for about the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks, and then suddenly they had the laundry room fire, and then it had to go to over to Cyprus. Had to get the hell out of there and go to Cyprus, and they don't know how long it's going to take for repairs now. So I mean, that in itself is okay. So they didn't sink it because there is images of it. But the images may be carefully curated in a certain sense, so you don't see that it may have been hit or whatever. But I think for the Iranians, that's a win. Basically, that's not quite as good as obviously taking it out of action or sinking it. But when you force an aircraft carrier to retire from the conflict, so it's basically you may as well have sunk it, at least in the short term. But of course, that's spun as a laundry room fire. And then the other one, the one that's down, was it at Lincoln?
Mm-hmm.
It was off the coast of, I think off the coast of Yemen, maybe, or no. So it was pretty close. It was in the kind of.
It was close between Oman and Yemen. It was somewhere in that.
But it was in the near the bottom of the strait, basically.
Yeah.
So it was close to Iran, right? And then it skedaddled off. It was within 300 kilometers, and then it skedaddled off to about another 700 or 800 kilometers away, behind mountains, in Oman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on there, you don't know. But both those aircraft carriers got out of there, let's say, and that's not insignificant, especially like even though the Abraham Lincoln moved 2 or 3 times the distance that it was away, further away from Iran. That makes a big difference from the point of view of actually being able to launch, effective strikes from aircraft. So, if you're right on the doorstep, you can get in, get out pretty quickly. You can attack before any alert is sent up, or any awareness on the part of the Iranians that it's happening. But if you have to fly 1,000 kilometers as opposed to 300 kilometers,
and then you're having to look at refueling mid-flight,
on way, all that kind of stuff, right?
Makes it even more complicated.
Right. Yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff like that that people need to just assume has happened and is happening, because it's the same as every war. It happens in every single war, in modern history anyway, especially in the era of mass information and all that kind of stuff. Where mass media is even more important. So the do or die business is, well, the other thing is, I mean, again, there's some stuff that they can't hide. For example, there was the E3 Sentry, the AWACS plane.
Yeah.
That was, is confirmed as having been
blown up.
At least one of them, maybe 2, I don't know. But
I think they said they struck a second one, or there was another one nearby. But at any rate, at the very least, this one, they did have confirmed pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the picture on the top there
it is.
Of that one. It's a video, but there's no point in playing the video. Right? That's picture one of the pictures of it having been taken out, and that's something like $400 million plane.
I've seen estimates as high as 500 million. 500
million, yeah. I'm seeing some here 700 million American AWACS. Who knows? I suppose it depends. It doesn't have. They don't have that many. Something like 15 or 16 or something like that. But again, they're not really replaceable, at least not in the short term, right?
Yeah.
And of course, there's allegations that, which may be true, but there's allegations that Russia provided the satellite info to the Iranians for on these planes, because it would be something that you'd probably want to protect. If it is $500 million, $500 million plane, you'd probably want to.
Well, in this particular context of everything as well, it's even more important because you have all of the other radar systems,
right,
in the surrounding area have been obliterated, which means it's even more important to have something like the E3 Sentry to be up in the air to give you the radar data that you're not able to get anymore from anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes even more strategically important. So the downing of one is even worse in this context.
Correct. There's also a problem with reports, let's say, from people in the know type thing, I suppose, have said that the US is running out of missile interceptors in particular, because that's the one they've been spending most of, or using most of. Let me see, I have something here. Basically weapon shortages in general critical offensive and defensive weapons, and inventory analysis shows they burned through 11,000 munitions in the first 16 days of the conflict that cost $26 billion, and that they're at most a month away from running out of some of the most critical weapons, like the THAAD, that's the high altitude air defense, and ATACMS and ground attack missiles. So basically, a lot of people are putting a time frame on this. We're a month. Again, it's just, I suppose it's still speculation, but people are saying, there's lots of different reasons why it would have to be fairly short. At least in Trump's mind, that the whole thing would have to be fairly short, assuming he has control over, or can control, the progress and the outcome of it. Because there's certain things that could happen, I suppose, that where Trump would feel like he can't really back out right now. So he'd be stuck between a rock and a hard place in a certain sense. Well, we just mentioned their defense shortages, which would be a big problem, in the sense of you'd open yourself to much more devastating missile attacks by Iran if you can't intercept so many anymore. You're getting into a quagmire there, and but there's also he's meant to go and meet Xi, and he had to put a Xi meeting back. The other normal diplomacy of Trump, winning across the board globally and meeting leaders and making great deals with people and stuff. If he's very focused on this, if this becomes something where it's 24/7 focus for months and months and months, it's not going to look good. And also you have, the World Cup in June or July or something like that, So basically, they've all been saying that. Vance has said it, and they've all said this isn't going to be this isn't going to be a forever war like in the past. The president's very clear this is going to be a short term, and we're going to win. And the thing is, they're not winning. Because it depends what, to determine whether or not you're winning, you have to be very clear on what your goal was. What the definition of winning is to you. What does it mean when you won? What do you have to have achieved to be able to say you won? So you have to define your
terms.
Yes, define your goals. Those haven't been very clearly defined. They've been shifting all over the place
the whole time.
And so if you have a set of goals that you set at the beginning, and this means this is what we want to achieve, this is why we're doing this, and when we've achieved those, we will have achieved those goals and therefore, quote unquote, won. But if you define them initially and then change them a week later and then change them again a week later or shift them around, then I suppose that's good for you in a certain sense, because you can, in theory,
move the goalpost to wherever.
Yeah, you can say you can say that this, our new objective is to have 3 AWACS planes shot down or set on fire, to have the Israelis in serious difficulty under Iranian missiles, and to have 2 of our aircraft carriers basically out of commission in this war. That's our goal. When we've achieved that, we will have won. Okay, it looks like you're on the way to winning. So you know what I mean. So it's almost as ridiculous as that, where you start to shift the definition of what it is to win, which when that definition, at least by the initial your initial statements of what the goal was, or any reasonable assessment, even as just a general assessment of how the two sides have gone in this, you're not winning. That's a lose, So it's not clear cut, but I mean the Iranians have. I think the Iranians do have the what they call escalation dominance here, in this sense. It's like the Iranians just want to. Their goal, they kind of have been more or less explicit, but it's easily inferred what their goal is. Their goal is to withstand the attack from the US and Israel, and to remain standing at the end of it, and at the same time to inflict enough suffering, enough damage on the US and Israel as the two main aggressors, really the only aggressors, so that they don't
attack again.
That they think twice about attacking.
That's the thing about like the strategic ambiguity on the one hand from Trump and team as opposed to the Iranians, where at the beginning when they were just using basically similar talking points from their negotiations, where it was, you're not allowed to have nukes and you're not allowed to have enrichment and you're not allowed to have ballistic missiles, and they had those in mind at first, and then it kind of has been shifting ever since then. But Iran has been very clear from the beginning and since then that when they hit back, it was the messaging that they were giving was saying, we want to make them hurt so they do not ever even consider doing this again. And now it has been expanded a bit, but it's also clearly defined in that we want reparations for all of the civilian infrastructure you've destroyed, security guarantees that this will never happen again, and we want all of your bases gone. And by them bombing all the bases and all of the military personnel evacuating the bases and stuff like that, they are in fact on the way to winning and getting those things that they said they want to achieve. Whereas with the US, where it was shifting definitions of things, like you were talking about, for example, this is a short duration. It's not gonna be like a long quagmire from previous administrations. Whereas at the beginning, they defined that as it'll be 3 or 4 days. And then it was like, all right, 2 or 3 weeks. And then it was like, okay, maybe like 4 to 5 weeks. But we're already like in that 4 to 5 week range.
Yeah, almost a month.
And JD Vance had an interview where he was talking about, look, we're going to have this wrapped up by the end of the year.
The end of this year?
Yeah.
He said that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear him say that.
Well, I mean, he was saying that he was going to be like, it's going to be wrapped up. Like, it's definitely going to be wrapped up by the end of the year. But that's again, like a shifting of the goalpost to where it went from 2 or 3 days to now the end of the year, where you're talking about 9 months. That's a huge swing.
There's also a possibility that they can just, it's maybe not black and white in the sense where they would have to call an official end to it, because
it's not an official war.
Exactly, it's not an official war, and that's not previous. I mean, it's kind of weird in a certain sense that it's got so much attention. Okay, because there's been a lot of missiles flying back and forth and all that kind of stuff, but it's just almost like it has been an increase in intensity, significant increase in intensity in what the US and Israel, and particularly Israel, has been doing in the general Middle East area for the past 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? With the difference that Iran has, is fully retaliating, but like both the US and Israel could just kind of wind this down, not necessarily say that, kind of mission accomplished, or we're winding down operations because we have achieved most of our goals. Let's move away from it, but at the same time, keep on harassing and bombing periodically, so you reduce the number of forces, but you keep but again, there's a problem here in the sense of missile defense and all that kind of stuff, in order to, they can't just walk away and allow Iran to continue to, missile at will type thing, you know what I mean? So it's super difficult. Like, I mean, I don't really know how they're going to extract themselves. And there's so many people talking right now about the long expected, ground invasion of the coast of Iran or whatever, or the island in the Persian Gulf and stuff, Karg Island and a few others maybe. Again, that's all still very speculative. That would seem to be a doubling down. That would be entrenching you because it's one thing to have standoff bombing, periodic bombing attacks, let's say, over every week or something like that, over a longer period of time. But once you put boots on the ground, you can't just look away from it. Like, you can't walk away from boots on the ground. That's our precious servicemen, right? You can't just walk away from it. You're still you're even more engaged than ever when you've got boots on the ground. So is that even going to happen? I don't know, but I thought it was, in terms of the actual, who's winning, obviously the escalation dominance here is that that Iran has. I mean, the US has, they don't really have much escalation opportunities. anymore. They can, the Israelis are chomping at the bit to kind of blow up Iran's nuclear sites and their gas fields and everything possible, right? But that's economically, that's a kind of seems to be a red line for the US. They don't want to set the whole thing on fire because, of course, if that was done to Iran would respond by going full scale on the.
It's mad. By other means.
Economic,
yeah.
It's energy mad energy, mutually assured destruction of energy, which is really bad for the entire globe and bad for Trump. So he can't go there. That's his red line. He can't cross that line. Whereas the Iranians have switched the whole. For me, the evidence that they're kind of winning in a certain sense in the overall strategic war, not related to how much has been bombed in either country, whatever, but basically the extent to which each country is able to put the other in a bind in a certain sense, like to put a Trump card down, or to put you in checkmate in a certain sense, or a version of checkmate was the Strait of Hormuz thing, because that suddenly became then the US's their main goal. They started out with nukes and ballistic missiles and all that kind of stuff, and then suddenly it was, we need to. Well, it seems to be, because what evidence of significant doubling down of commitment on the part of the US would be putting boots on the ground, right? It's one thing to just have a standoff war bombing Iran from a distance, but when you feel forced to put boots on the ground, that means, and especially when you said that wasn't going to happen, or you hadn't, at least publicly, intended that, and then suddenly you announce that it is maybe going to happen, that means things aren't going your way. Things haven't gone according to plan because you didn't intend that, and now you have to actually put servicemen, directly in harm's way. So that's an evidence of things not going your way, i.e. another way of saying that is that you're losing, objectively, let's say, on a broader scale. And Iran was able to divert, like I said, their original goals to now America's priority, at least, is opening the Strait of Hormuz.
Which the Pakistani foreign minister who said it on Twitter, that so the goal now is to open the Strait of Hormuz, which was already open before you went in.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, all those elements just point to this being an ill thought out, and having an ill thought out a misadventure, having the potential to become a kind of a quagmire. That they say that they're not going to get involved in, like, we're not doing any more Middle Eastern forever wars or quagmires or anything like that. But like, now you're planning to put several thousand US Marines on the ground. So the fact that Iran could basically take America's initial goals and say, no, you have to drop those and focus on this one because this is the one I want you to focus on. Basically, Iran has now dictating the objectives.
Yeah.
What the objectives of the war are for the US. And not only that, but dictating that objective by saying, okay, looks like you're going to have to prioritize opening the Strait of Hormuz. But you're not going to be able to do that unless we agree, unless there's some accommodation. So,
because there's no way around it at this point. It's been a month almost, and we are right back where we started, in the sense that
even before.
There is no, like, nothing has been accomplished, in the sense that the Iranian regime has not fallen. In fact, it's even stronger, because every single night since this escapade, Epstein's fury, impotent rage began, every single night there's been massive rallies of support for the Iranian government, and even people who are in Iran are saying the people that were against the Ayatollah are now on their side because this is existential for them. It's about having your country remain in your country's control, as opposed to being some kind of puppet regime like Syria, like Libya, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an existential thing that is now made the situation worse from a U.S. strategic standpoint, in terms of them seeking regime change, which they said they didn't, but obviously that was what they were intending by killing a lot of the heads of the regime.
That was ultimately the goal.
Yeah.
I mean, everything else was just, even though we cited them as their objectives, everything else was just propaganda or narrative for the public, basically, to convince the public, to make it sound a bit more... because you can't just go around saying we want regime change. Why do you want regime change? Just don't like that regime.
They're naughty people.
Just not friends with them. Like, don't like my neighbor, gonna take his house. It's like, no, you have to dress your neighbor up as being a threat to the entire community, and that's why you're taking this action on behalf of the entire global community to protect them all from this dangerous threat. Not just because you don't like them, or even worse, because they have stuff you want. I like my neighbor's, silverware.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that stuff was basically narrative. It was regime change in the sense of like the leader, and it annoys me, that term regime change. Even people who are kind of somewhat, middle of the road, or even sympathetic towards Iran, and still have been programmed with the term regime. It just seems so. It's obviously propaganda to use that, and they.
It's something you use against any government you don't like.
Yeah.
So Putin's regime.
Yeah,
and so on.
Yeah, my neighbor's regime. My neighbor's running a regime in his house, and I need to overthrow it to get his silverware because he's bombing his own family inside his own house, and he threatens to, he may well bomb the rest of the houses in the street, and I am the only one who's willing to stand up. I've asked my other neighbors to come and help me, but even though we're part of a community alliance, they're not willing to help me because they're too scared. So I'm going to have to do it myself, along with my friends that I have in tunnels out the back of my house. We're going to get them. Sorry. Yeah, that was all narratives. Obviously, regime change. Wanted to get rid of, and the reason regime change, obviously, you want to get rid of the people in control in Iran, in the government, because they're not ideologically aligned with you. That's the main thing. Everything else would fall into place. All the stuff is secondary. If you can, you
can tolerate them having nuclear enrichment. You can tolerate them
having all the missiles. You can tolerate them having nuclear weapons as long as they're on our side.
Yeah. So long as they are willing to put their country last.
Well, put it in service to America and Israel primarily.
Then it's fine.
Yeah. As long as you're willing to be subservient, and to recognize the awesome power of Exceptionalistan and the Jewish victim state, then everything's fine. You can do whatever you want. But if you are in some way antagonistic towards us, or think that you have the right to be your own country, if you know what I mean, in a certain sense, like be sovereign and independent, and especially, just sovereign and independent. There's no room for sovereign independent in the sense of not being aligned with America and Israel, especially like in the Middle East. Then you're evil. Then you're a regime. You could easily go from being a regime to being a government if you would simply agree to bow down. And
which is exactly why they don't call MBS in Saudi Arabia a regime.
Yeah,
that's why they don't do it in Qatar. That's why they don't do it in Bahrain. The UAE, all of them. They're all regimes. Despots.
Yeah, they're all regimes by the same token that they apply that to Iran. But you don't get to call them that, The Saudi Arabian government and the Prime Minister, or the President, or whoever are there. Yeah. Crown Prince. The Crown Prince.
But because
regime, evil Ayatollah.
Like Trump said, because MBS kisses his ass.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, exactly. That's
so
the difference.
You have to kiss. Some people say you have to kiss the ring, but really you have to kiss the ass.
Yes. When is your regime not a regime? When it kisses my ass. Then the regime becomes a government, a friendly government.
A friendly government.
So they obviously, the point is that, like we just said, if they could change, they had the idea that they could somehow change the leadership, but if they could change the leadership, they would. Everything else would be downstream from that.
Yeah.
Or nothing else would really necessarily have to change, or it all would be under their control, basically. So it doesn't matter what goes on afterwards. But they realized to their credit, they realized kind of pretty quickly that if that was going to happen, it would have to be some kind of color revolution stoked from within. They weren't really going to be able to, and they seemed to, but they even seemed to have misread that, They seem to have modeled or understood the Iranian model of government based on kind of Western governments, let's say, where it's just a select group of a clique at the top who are controlling everybody else. And once you get rid of them, then the people, even just one tier below them in the government will go, finally, freedom, we can do what we want. But it seems that in Iran, it's nested all the way down type thing, and they're all on the same page.
They're all true believers.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you remove, because basically you could look at like a pyramid, if you want, but it's maybe more like a broadened pyramid, let's say. You know what I mean? It's not like very, very tightly controlled at the top. It's almost like democratic in a certain sense, you know what I mean? Where it's widely spread. It's like grassroots democracy, if you know what I mean. If you had like
decentralized democracy,
decentralized guerrilla socialist democracy or something like that, with an Islamic flavor thrown in. So yeah, that's none of it's happening.
I don't see how continuing on with the bombings, even if they were to escalate, the retaliation would be terrible.
Yep.
The US and Israel they've been bombing universities, for example, and so now the Iranians have said you need to apologize and say that you condemn having bombed the Technical Institute of Tehran, or we're going to target all of your, connected U.S.-Israeli universities in the region.
Right, in the middle. They've issued a list of those from tomorrow. They had midday Monday, that they need to get out of there. Of course, there's a long list of them. It's in every Gulf state and in Israel, American University, there's a bunch of other names.
There's an NYU one somewhere, and
Carnegie Mellon University, and all these different Gulf states. Of course, you publish this long list. It's not like they're all going to be attacked at the same time, but basically none of them know which one's going to be first, or if it'll happen at all. So it's effectively, it's like a bomb scare. You know what I mean? Get everybody out of there.
Because they've made good on most of their threats so far, because they've also said that this is no longer an eye for an eye. This is, we've put on red lines, and we've not escalated things because we're trying to keep things below the threshold. But you keep pushing. So now we're going to raise our red line a bit and say, anytime you hurt us, well, we're going to hurt you harder. And they can do that, and they have been doing that. But bringing it back to what I was trying to say, continuing doing that, therefore, with all of these things said, I don't see that going well for them. So then you got to look at your other options. One of them, obviously, boots on the ground. But for all the reasons that I can think of, it would be a terrible idea. Whether you're trying to secure the Strait of Hormuz by taking some of the islands, and maybe trying to cut off some of the either naval capabilities of the Iranians, or maybe coastal ballistic missile silos, or what have you. If they were to do that, I don't see that going well for them either, not least of which because of all the things we've already said, but also because now, because they're talking about boots on the ground, they've got the Iranian militia coming into Iran.
Iraqi militia.
Sorry, Iraqi militia, Iraqi Shia militia coming in to Iran from Iraq to support the Iranians in case there are ground troops. Now, Iran has like 1 million troops of various kinds. They don't need help, but they have such a strong connection to everyone else in the region, to the other Shia, that they are signing up and literally on the way there for jihad to protect the Iranian state. So I don't see that going well for them either.
Yeah, and those Iraqi that's not good for America in Iraq either. You know, the Iraqi militia, the Iraqi Shia militia, they're from the kind of border areas in Iraq, between Iraq and Iran and stuff. But there's quite a number of them, and they were directly involved in, like, you know, pushing back against the US over the whole Iraq invasion and occupation, and that would just kind of, like, you know, kind of reassert Iraqi resistance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be a bunch of, if they were to be engaged with, if they were to have some kind of a direct engagement with US troops in Iran, and then they go back to Iraq. I mean, they're taking that experience. You know what I mean? It just it doesn't look good. It's not good for the US and Iraq in terms of its presence there. It's already shaky. You know, there's been a lot of attacks on the US bases, the Green Zone and Victoria base in Baghdad and in other parts of Iraq, you know, from that same Iraqi militia, you know, and that would just it's just it's like a doubling down on the Iraqi people in a certain sense. Their desire, ultimately, long term, I suppose, desire to for a lot of them, probably the majority of them, of wanting the US out of Iraq, you know. So, but the Strait of the idea of Marines going into those islands, and I think, I mean, there's obviously nothing's ever what it seems to be in a certain sense. There's always some kind of calculation going on, especially now, you know, as things don't go so well for the US and Israel. They're starting to, you know, it's not just a turkey shoot anymore. It wasn't from the get-go. They thought they held on to the idea that it could be a turkey shoot for a while, but then they realized that it wasn't, that the turkey was shooting back, and it had body armor, you know. So it's like, and that's all,
and a bazooka.
Yeah, and that's all the turkey really, that, like we're saying earlier on, that's all the turkey needs to do in that sense, is, you know, have enough body armor and be able to shoot back, so that the hunters realize this isn't a turkey shoot anymore. They don't have free reign, and the turkey just needs to dissuade them from doing that again, to make them suffer enough, or give them a hard enough experience, a difficult enough experience, so that they would think twice about ever doing it again, you know.
Which achieves the objective.
Which means, and that's been their objective, and that, I mean, ultimately that's, Iran would win in that situation. I mean, again, it's all about the propaganda and what people believe, but if you can put the propaganda aside, and when this thing's over and you look at it, if Iran's still standing and America's gone away and Israel's nursing its wounds, then they lost.
Yeah.
Because that's not what they intended at all, you know? But the Marines on the islands in the Persian Gulf and stuff is... you have to wonder what the intent is there. I can't imagine there's any intent to try and invade, especially from the south like that. Well, any side of Iran isn't good.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get anywhere. But they're not invading Iran from the south. Let's say they'd have like 1,000 kilometers to travel before they got to anywhere significant, type thing. You know.
I mean, that's the only real place you could kind of do it, because that's where there's fewer mountains and stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So that would be the most traversable area, but it's also the farthest away from all of the things that you're going to need to take. And
the Iranians would put a lot of people down there if they saw that happening. You know, they would confront you down there. You know,
so that's the other thing. The eastern side of Iran, the missile bases there, so far as I understand it, still haven't really done a whole lot.
The underground bases, yeah.
They haven't really been participating in anything. And I've been wondering about why that is for a while, because they have the ability to launch things from there to wherever they need to. Now, part of my thinking was maybe it was in case Pakistan decided to join in on behalf of Saudi Arabia, but that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. That mutual agreement that was signed between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, like, I mean, the E3 AWACS planes, that they were in Saudi Arabia when they just got blown up.
Right.
But I don't hear anything from the Pakistanis saying, this is the red line, we're coming in.
From the Pakistanis?
Yeah. So that's not going anywhere. So I'm just wondering if there's any other potential reason for that, and if they were to try and land on the southern southeastern coast and try and go up, well, then you've got basically untouched missile bases that can barrage you to Kingdom Come.
And drones and all kinds of stuff. No, it's like, it's crazy. Like, I mean, the only thing I can think of that they're, I mean, that's the speculation, is that it's those islands, right? And the main island would be Cork Island and maybe a few others. But Cork Island is a reservoir, basically. It has a bunch of oil tanks there. And pretty much what the Iranians have been doing with this toll system on the Persian Gulf is, you know, they're letting some ships in. There's been talk about them, if they pay in yuan, all that kind of stuff, and they have to go back and they be going in and out, they're checked.
Yeah.
By the Iranians. But the ships that are coming in, that they're allowing in, that they make an agreement with from different countries, quite a few Pakistani ships come in recently, like 10 or 12 or something like that. They were allowed in to get oil, but they're getting Iranian oil. They're not going anywhere near Saudi Arabia. Like, Saudi Arabia ships all its oil from that coast as well, on the Persian Gulf. They've diverted a lot to the Red Sea, but they have a limited capacity there compared to the other side on the Red Sea, because there's a pipeline that pumps it across the whole of Saudi Arabia over to the Red Sea area. So there've been a lot of ships have been going up that direction, but there's still a bunch, like 1,500, 2,000 ships in the Persian Gulf still kind of stuck waiting to see what happens. And the ones that are being let in to Cork Island to be filled with Iranian oil. They're not being let in to be filled with Saudi oil or UAE oil, right? So trying to take Cork Island is a kind of a smart move in a certain sense, because if you're able to get onto that island, neither side wants to blow it up.
Yeah.
And blow up that facility for shipping oil, because of the effect that we're having the global economy or whatever on oil prices, and just because it would double down if the US were to blow up those oil depots or reservoirs. Then Iran would respond by attacking Saudi, and so that's that red line again, where you don't want to go beyond that threshold where where each of them start blowing up, where the US or Israel blows up Iran's oil and gas refineries, and then Iran responds by doing the same to the Middle East, and then the whole thing gets immeasurably worse, economically at least. So Trump doesn't want to have that on his record, basically, right? So that's why he's drawn a line, and that's why he kind of pulled the Israelis up for attacking the Pars facility, the LNG facility.
Yeah.
So you could see it as a kind of a smart move in a certain sense, where you might feel protected if you've dropped a bunch of Marines onto Cork Island, and it's most of the island is taken up by massive oil tanks that are storing oil to be fed into ships. The Iranians wouldn't want to attack that wholesale either, because they'd be blowing up their own oil, and the Americans don't want to do it because of the reason they just give.
But then it's a meat grinder.
Yeah, but
because if you send, say, I'm America and you are Iran, I send, say, 10,000 Marines to take the island. Well, now I have to protect those Marines with sorties and strikes, and
without blowing up the oil tanks,
without blowing up the oil tanks or any of the infrastructure. And keep supplying them with enough material, food and ammunition, etc., so that they can continue occupying the island. Now that's a strategic feat for that area. For all the reasons we've already talked about. But now your side of it. You have, and obviously, if I send the 10,000 Marines, that means that if I wanted to reinforce it, I'm going to have to bring more men from halfway across the world to reinforce them.
Yeah, it's a small place as well. It's like 7 by. There's a little island offshore with a Cork Island or whatever, but both of them have airport. It's got an airport. Cork Island. It's got a fairly long runway and stuff, but it's basically 7 kilometers by 3 kilometers wide, so 4 miles by a mile and a half. Not a lot, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's just whether or not that's. I mean, I don't imagine they'd be able to actually. Again, it's dubious. It has that element of, if you're able to take it, the Iranians won't want to fire a bunch of missiles at you and blow the whole place up and destroy their own infrastructure. but the Americans don't want to destroy that infrastructure either. So it's almost like a standoff, a Mexican standoff or something like that,
Yeah.
And it's pretty, it's pretty desperate. If that's what it is, then it's pretty desperate, There's also Bushehr, a city, a fairly sizable city right on the coast there, not far from Cork Island, that has the nuclear power plant. But there's a bunch of Russians there, probably there's 400 or 500 Russian personnel working at that power plant, because the Russians basically helped build it, and they still maintain it. And there's probably a lot of Russian military there as well. And in terms of Iranian missiles, you notice there, I think probably a week ago or so, the Israelis had attacked some ships in the Caspian, and the Russians weren't happy about it.
Yeah.
Basically because the Russians have been supplying not just intelligence, but also parts, either missiles or drones, or parts for drones, parts for missiles, to Iran via the Caspian Sea. The Israelis got wind of that and then were attacked a couple of boats, but the Russians responded and said, hey, cut that shit out. We're not going to stand for that. Because, and justifiably enough, because the US and Israel have been supplying Ukraine with weapons to kill American soldiers or Russian soldiers for the past 4 years. So the fact that the US, or particularly Israel, would decide that Russia, you're not allowed to help Iran in any way, any significant way, would be slightly hypocritical, right? Extremely hypocritical, which is why the Russians were like, let's not go there, because all's fair in love and war, especially under the terms that you guys have actually set, which is that you, like I said, you've been supplying Ukraine with weapons to kill our soldiers, so we're going to supply Iran with weapons. Yeah. And, not even close to the kind of support that you have given Ukrainians. We're just giving them, the means to continue to defend themselves, because they're the ones who have been attacked, because that's the rationale you guys used in Ukraine. You said Ukraine was attacked by Russia. We're just helping Ukraine defend itself. Well, we're just helping Iran defend itself. What regime?
The difference in terms of what that actual material support looks like you're saying, is very different. Whereas Ukraine, they're actually sending in tanks and missile batteries and so on and so forth. All of it. All of that is not native to Ukraine.
Right.
All of the stuff that Iran is using
is all their own,
is all their own making. For the most part.
Yeah, well, they get parts from different places. But
maybe they get parts from other things.
To a large extent, it's their own,
So they do all that themselves, and they've put out media showing that some of their missile factories are still in operation. So it's not like they need the Russians to send them anything in that respect. And so it's kind of like, turnabout is fair play. And it seems like, Russia is okay to do this like war by proxy thing. They're fine with that level. They've kind of accepted that for Ukraine. But Israel directly attacking Russian ships in the Caspian, that's direct.
Right.
You don't go direct.
Yeah.
Because that's not how this works. If you want to make this a direct hot war, then okay, but know what you're getting into.
Right. For sure. Yeah, did you see JD Vance? I mean, for me, this is an example of, I don't know if, it's just the same old propaganda. It's very, very boring. But JD Vance was speaking somewhere. It was on Fox News, I think. Or no, actually on CNN. He was speaking to somebody somewhere, him and Besant and Pam Bondi and people like that. This is rationale for why we had to attack Iran. It's like doubling down. 4 weeks later, you're now giving this reason why you have to attack Iran. Have a listen.
When I say options, I think it's important the American people know options for what. And it's options to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. You talk about people who walk into a crowded supermarket and have a vest on, and they blow up the vest and a couple of people get killed, and that's a terrible tragedy. What happens when what's on the vest is not something that can kill a couple of people, but can kill many, many tens of thousands of people? That is the most important American national security objective that exists for any administration at any time, is you don't want the worst people in the world to have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president is doing this. That's why the president cares so much about this particular issue.
So he's talking about a nuclear suicide vest. Maybe, miniaturized nukes fit inside a vest.
You get your little Hello Kitty backpack.
Yeah, and you got a nuke in there. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with. When you get to that level of crass propaganda, like that's way worse than way more crass than the stuff that was going on in 2003, like more than 23 years ago, basically, when they tried to justify the invasion of Iraq with fake Saddam's weapons of mass destruction and stuff that he didn't have. They've obviously said the same thing about Iran. They've just rehashed the same old bullshit. They're going to have a nuke, weapons of mass destruction. It's just weapons of mass destruction part 2. But JD Vance doubling down, like going full retard on it, and saying nuclear suicide vest.
Which is why I really appreciated Joe Kent in his talk with Tucker when he gave a very good description of how sane the Iranians are. Mm-hmm. And how thoughtful they are, and respectful, even, you could say, where they are very thoughtful and deliberate in avoiding escalation. And the way that he basically describes what they've done and what they were doing, and it basically proves the point that they're not, in fact, this crazy regime that's going to put nuclear bombs and Hello Kitty backpacks to blow up, the Mall of America.
Right.
Like these two things are mutually exclusive. Either you're absolutely batshit crazy, in which case this would have started a long time ago.
Right.
And we wouldn't be having this conversation because, the world would be a wreck.
Right.
Or they're actually responding proportionately and considerately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure they are.
In which case, they're not an actual threat to giving suicide bombers nuclear bombs. Mm-hmm. So it's like you said, it's just crass bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And America can do that, in a certain sense, because it can ultimately sail away 5,000 miles back home and just leave a big mess, Israel, not so much, because it can't sail anywhere.
Nope.
Because it's a country. And so Israel, that's why Israel, apart from the obvious reasons, the reasons we all know about why Israel is the way it is, it's also got more skin in the game in a certain sense, more direct skin in the game. America has some skin in the game in the sense of, like JD Vance talking there. It would be nice if he was just like they would dispense with this bullshit. Of course, that's unreasonable for me to ask for them to dispense with the crass propaganda about nuclear suicide vests, etc., and just tell people why you're actually doing what you're doing. But apparently, people are deemed to be too stupid, too ignorant to understand the real reasons why you're even doing this. Which is all about. It can't be. This situation with Iran can't be detached from the context of the last year, let's say, when Trump's second term started and he hit the ground running. Within a few months of talking about narco-trafficante terrorists in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of America, narco-trafficantes trafficking drugs from Venezuela, with Maduro as the arch narco-trafficante, sending drugs and killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. Mm-hmm. You don't have to say, killing them like by his own hand, I suppose. So he had to be, of course, that was setting the scene. That happened not long after Trump, in the first few months of Trump becoming president again last year. And they started off with that, setting the scene, built it up, bombing the boats in the Caribbean, and then leading up to January this year, of taking Venezuela and taking it. At least there's a silver lining in the sense of in terms of Trump's transparency or his inability to keep the quiet part quiet, where he basically said it's for the oil. We're doing it for the oil. Just leave it at that. So if Venezuela was to capture Venezuela's oil,
Mm-hmm.
then it's reasonable to assume that the primary reason for this attack on Iran is for oil as well. The two can't be dissociated from each other. They're part of a whole. And the broader picture around that is the US attempting to, become the dominant energy broker, let's say, in the world, in the face of a changing world, basically, with Russia, China, multipolarity, BRICS, all that kind of stuff. This is America reading the signs, reading the tea leaves, and looking into the near future and realizing that it's beset by peer competitors who, more than anything economically, they militarily have the ability to stop America from doing what it usually does, which is beating people into submission. So, and with that in place, then they're able to push forward with their economic game plan, let's say, of remaking the world from an economic point of view and restructuring the world economically in terms of the power balance, economic power balance in the world, which is not good for America. And Trump's response to that was, okay, look, the core aspect of this is energy. The countries that are opposing us, primarily Russia and China and their associates, their Achilles heel, in a certain sense, like everybody's, is energy, oil and gas.
Yeah.
So America needs to take as much oil and gas, or consolidate its control and expand its control over as much of the oil and gas resources in the world as possible, in order to have leverage over those other countries so they don't go too far in trying to de-dollarize and blah, blah, blah. So that's ultimately, I think, what's behind all of this. And it would be nice if they were able to be just honest about that instead of talking about Hello Kitty bags with nuclear weapons in them. But apparently the public either can't understand. I don't think they can't understand it. It's just that it's not a very compelling reason for the American public, for example, or the Western public to get behind. If it's just something about geopolitics and economic power and leverage and stuff. I mean, ultimately you could spin it as something that is in the best interest of the Americans, like the standard of living that you've come to enjoy as a result of our ability to project our influence and power and control a lot of the world's economy through the dollar, the petrodollar, etc. And if that is under threat, then your lifestyle is under threat. Therefore, we should go to war. But you might not just... People might say, well, isn't there a different way, or isn't there another way we could do this?
Exactly.
And they would want to explore those other ways and stuff rather than going to war. So it's much better to just try and bludgeon them with Hello Kitty nukes.
Yeah.
And that'll get them behind. Let's just go with a simple, crass, blunt force instrument. So yeah, it's a bit much for me to ask for them to be just straight up honest about it, I think, because they know it probably wouldn't work, But yeah, and the Israelis are having a hard time, I think. Hezbollah, they were told Hezbollah was done after, the pagers and all that kind of stuff last 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 2 years ago or a year ago? 2 years ago. When was that pager business? 2024?
2024, I think.
And they were told that Hezbollah was a spent force that had been destroyed, had been defeated.
Yeah.
Nasrallah was taken out, all that kind of stuff was done, and they marched on and moved on to Iran. But at that, well, it doesn't seem to be the case. The Israelis are waking up to the fact that, especially since the Israelis started bombing southern Lebanon and have announced that they're going to take a chunk of the south of the country, occupy it and kick people out.
They've announced their ground invasion.
And have kicked people out of their homes. 1 million people not allowed to come back. So Hezbollah just basically responded to that. And apparently they're not a spent force, and they've been firing lots of missiles and rockets at northern Israel, and kind of tying a lot of the their attention, let's say, down, and redirecting it from Iran. Sorry. And so the Israelis aren't happy about that, I suppose. A lot of Israeli people aren't happy about the fact that they were sold a line of bullshit, and now they're having to go to their shelters pretty much every night.
Yeah.
and an increasing amount of their towns and stuff, smaller villages, especially in the north, are coming under Hezbollah fire and being, people are fleeing those towns, evacuating those towns, and then Iran is still firing regularly enough missiles at Tel Aviv and different places in Israel. So there's really
Haifa and everywhere else.
Yeah, Haifa.
It's like and like you were saying, everyone thought Hezbollah was done, but then this kicked off, and turns out they weren't spent. Yeah. And not only that, they've got some advanced weapons now too. I don't know how accurate they are, but I've seen videos that were allegedly of cluster warheads,
right?
Fired from Hezbollah, from Lebanon, which means that not only were they not a spent force, but they fooled you. They fooled everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's not hard to fool the Israelis, like, in that sense, We just lie low and pretend you're defeated.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, we won. Kind of like America in a certain sense, But, and now that where they do worst, where the Israelis do worst is when they do a ground invasion.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody can be good if you've got high-tech weapons by just launching them, from standoff positions, from jets or from launchers, whatever, far away, and you think you're like really powerful because you're just pushing a button basically, and firing a missile at kind of people who are largely defensive against it. But they've decided now in their hubris to invade southern Lebanon just over the past 3 or 4 days. And the reports out of that are not good. Like, there's multiple ambushes against Israelis. A lot of them being killed. Basically, Israeli soldiers being killed. Merkava tanks being taken out, and it's almost like a repeat of the 2006 war when the Israelis invaded Lebanon and got their asses handed to them. Like, hundreds of Merkava tanks were taken out, and a lot of soldiers were killed. And they didn't learn their lesson from that, apparently. So it seems to be Hezbollah definitely has the upper hand in that respect when it comes to a ground invasion, which is kind of interesting, because and I think it may prove to be the same with the Iranians and the Marines, because these are, it's just never a safe bet. It's never a good idea unless you're going to do human waves. You've got a massive army and you're going to go full bore. But if you have a lot of sensitivity around deaths, if there's a lot of public reluctance, let's say, or sensitivity towards seeing too many coffins coming home and stuff, in wars of old that wasn't an issue. It was far out. The people back home didn't get to know about it, and you could throw hundreds of thousands of soldiers into a battle and have half of them killed, and it would be fine as long as you won. But a few dozen Israeli soldiers killed, and suddenly it's like, this is a disaster. And it would be the same thing in Iran, if the Marines were to invade, a few dozen Marines being publicly admitted as having been killed. Suddenly it's like, what is Trump doing? This is a very bad idea. So in that sense, the invaded country always has in the modern sense, has an advantage, Not only is it their own, is it their home turf type of thing that they know better and can stage ambushes better and all that kind of stuff. You're the invading power that doesn't really know this, layout very well, or can't really anticipate. Basically it's home advantage, right? Yeah. So, but also they just don't have the experience either. The Israelis don't have. I don't know. I think there's that sensitivity. These countries that are being bombed, like the Hezbollah and the Iranians, the Lebanese and the Iranians, seem to have an ability to accept, because they're kind of, Lebanon is to some extent an irregular fighting force, not the official Lebanese army, so there isn't the same public sensitivity to it in a certain sense. They're understood as being this resistance force, and you're going to get killed, so there's no wailing and gnashing of teeth and claiming this is a disaster when a bunch of them are killed. And the Iranians have that same kind of spirit in a certain sense, where even for civilians, it doesn't matter how many are killed, because, again, it's the home advantage and the advantage of the country being invaded. You're seen as the
any death is
it's justified because you're being aggressed against. Basically, you're the one who's being attacked, and it's like these people are dying, in service to a noble cause. They have the moral high ground, basically. Whereas the invader finds it much more difficult to justify or to to claim that they have a moral high ground by invading another country, and especially on charges that are kind of trumped up charges. Especially in America, a lot of people aren't believing it, and they know, they can see through the bullshit about Hello Kitty nukes and stuff like that, right? So they know that they don't have that sense of moral superiority, let's say, that the Iranians and Lebanese, anybody else who's attacked, do have, So it's not it's not a good. It's not a good proposition, I don't think, for anything. The Israelis are maybe the exception, in the sense that they would feel that they have the quote-unquote moral high ground because they're the perennial or perpetual victims.
Yeah, and the chosen people. And
Iran is... the Israelis turn it around in their head and feel that they're the ones being attacked. They're the ones who are under threat. That Iran is the aggressor. I mean, that's absolutely... I think the vast majority of Israelis see this conflict as in that way. They see it as if Israel is being attacked. Israel has been attacked in an unprovoked fashion by Iran. Okay, not technically in terms of how this conflict started, but
it's the same Iran with the messaging for October, since October 7th. It's the exact same messaging structure, where they point to October 7th and they see, look what happened on October 7th. And it's like, but what about the 70 years before that? What about the 80 years before that? The 90 years before that? Like, what about all of the history that led up to this moment? That doesn't matter.
In their mind, it doesn't matter, because that was their homeland, and they're always victims. I mean, once you have that victim mentality, it justifies everything. I mean, no matter... You're justified in attacking and killing everybody and anybody because you are perpetually the victim.
Yeah. So it's the same kind of messaging here, where Iran is attacking Israel, and the Israelis are like, see, we told you, they've been wanting to kill us this whole time. Yeah. And now they're actually coming out, and they're taking off their masks, and they're showing their true Nazi faces, and we have to kill them.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't... It'll make you crazy trying to actually... Anybody comes with that argument, I mean, no point. There's no point, literally no point in trying to, because I mean, that's baked into Israeli Jewish mentality from cradle to grave. You know what I mean? So it's not something you're going to logically, contest or push back against, or try and explain to them how, actually, you seem to be mistaken. You're the ones who attacked Iran. No.
Yeah. It's a different thing from explaining to someone why 2 + 2 = 4. It's a very different thing to explain that to someone versus, okay, your entire identity of you as yourself and what you think and what you believe, all of that is based on lies.
I'm based on 2 + 2 = 5.
And based on 2 + 2 = 5.
And I'm trying
to tell you, no, 2 + 2 = 4. But
your whole philosophy is wrong.
Your whole philosophy,
your whole ideology,
your life,
your self-image, everything is all wrong. So when you try and tell them that they're the aggressors here, you may as well...
Yeah, pack up and go home.
Yeah, it's pointless. But I think the Israelis are tiring of this whole situation. I think mainly because they're not seeing the possibility, because their whole philosophy, like I said, is that Iran is this potential aggressor who always wanted to kill them, wipe Israel off the map, blah, blah, blah. And that they're justified. They have the moral high ground in attacking Iran. But they realize at this point that, back to the original real goal of quote-unquote regime change, that's faded into the distance. That's not a possibility anymore. So a lot of them now are wondering, why are we suffering these attacks from Iran? Why are we even involved in this war that's causing these attacks from Iran? Because we're not going to achieve the only thing that's actually worth achieving, which is radical change in Iran. So that's no longer a threat. So it no longer wants to wipe us off the face of the earth, quote unquote. So I think patience and tolerance for this war is definitely waning in Israel, and it's definitely not popular war amongst the MAGA peoples as well. Apart from one. Well, there's more than one, obviously, but
yeah, there's one in particular.
No, I found one big orange man in particular. But I don't think he thinks he's not I don't think he really likes it either. This is Steve Bannon. I mean, it's quite long, but we don't need to listen to it all. You could even just have a listen to the first bit.
Dr. Thayer, if we're going to go to war, let's go to total war. And what I mean by total war, let's shut down everybody trading with them. Let's go to UAE and said, hey, you got like 2 hours to go to Dubai and shut it all down. The Pirate Cove in Dubai got to stop. We got to stop the Arabs. Everybody's playing games. The Israelis are playing games with us. The Arabs are playing games with us. The Europeans are playing games with us. And what are we doing? We're sending troops over there. Which is fine. President Trump needs options and alternatives to negotiate here around the military operation victory. And Marco Rubio ought to go on the morning shows tomorrow, not Scott Bessent, but Marco Rubio ought to go on the morning shows tomorrow and lay out and go back to this definition. If the military objectives that he talked about on the tarmac, which have been what we've said, those 4 military objectives, if that is the sum total of our objectives, and that can be done by increasing an intense bombing campaign, and we know that there's 3,500, I think there's 3,500 additional, or maybe up to 6,000 additional targets, that's fine. Then keep doing it. If that's the objectives, and then you got that, either negotiate or just withdraw. If you've met your objectives, I don't know what you need to negotiate. Now, if it's bigger than those objectives, Marco Rubio is National Security Advisor, not a Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, because I think by statute, National Security Advisor from the National Security Act and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs are the 2 senior advisors, and he ought to have just if that's it, then we shouldn't be on any big search for who we actually have to negotiate with. Now, if it's broader than that and we want something broader than that, that's fine. Then people ought to know that, because that probably means we may, not saying we have to, we may need an alternative of actual combat troops. Let's call them what they are. Let's stop saying boots on the ground. Let's call them combat troops. Young men and women of the United States of America, combat troops inserted into the Persian Gulf, or maybe even the mainland of Persia. We're gonna go back and redo what Alexander the Great did 2,300 years ago. Fine. If we do that, though, I want Arabs at the beginning.
I want Arabs. I just thought that was interesting because he's Mr. MAGA, right? Or he was Mr. MAGA, but he's also he's basically given an Israeli perspective there. That's what the Israelis want. The Israelis want the Americans committed more. Just do more. Yeah. Or let us do more. But he's someone who, ostensibly, at least from my reading of it, was that he was anti neocon, quagmires, Middle Eastern wars, all this kind of stuff. But now he's fully on board, and he's basically spouting effectively the Israeli line. And then that just ties back to those long interviews that are available online of him with Jeffrey Epstein. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't to this day actually addressed that, his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and why and how, of all people, at least publicly, he was spending long hours with him and long, spurious debates on stupid ideas, stupid philosophical ideas and stuff. If you've ever listened to some of the videos, interviews he did with him, he's like very interested in Jeffrey Epstein as a person. What do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And he has never addressed his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So I just find it interesting that he appears to have had such a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and we know who Jeffrey Epstein was working for, and that he's now spouting the Israeli line, which is absolutely, well, it's in line with Trump, but with Trump's official perspective on this. Although we can obviously question that, but he seems to be. You'd think he'd be the one who based on his past history up until now, that he would be the one who would be pushing back against all of this, but he's not. And it's because, I don't know.
Some kind of reason.
Because Israel.
Well, I thought you were going to...
But yeah, go somewhere else.
Let's see here. I thought you were going to talk about this one, because yesterday Trump truthed that people should tune in to a segment from Mark Levine. And so people tuned in to figure out, well, why is Trump saying
why should we watch this?
Why should we watch this? And if you want to play, it's only a minute long.
Go ahead.
Oh, Jesus.
It's hard, but yeah.
Troops on the ground. He said no troops on the ground. I don't remember that in any campaign speech either. But why would we need troops on the ground? Well, there's a lot of reasons. And we wouldn't need 300,000 of them. It's this uranium, too. We've got to get the uranium. If it cannot be destroyed, if it cannot be altered, we got to get it. For the reason I just said. You can make dirty bombs, and over time you can still make sophisticated missiles. So you need to get to the uranium. That's why I'm reading in the paper, we're talking about the 82nd Airborne, we're talking about these various special forces and the various military services and so forth. He's not talking about sending regular army and infantry in by the hundreds of thousands. The men he's talking about, the units he's talking about, they are specialized. And you know what else? I remember from my days in the Reagan administration. Many of them are trained for a moment like this, to try and secure enriched uranium. Many have been trained for moments like this.
This very moment, they've been training their whole life for this very moment.
Comes down to this moment.
So they can take the Hello Kitty backpacks.
Yes.
From the Iranians.
Make sure you get the Hello Kitty backpacks, because if they don't have those, they will have nothing to transport.
They don't have that.
They won't be able to transport the dirty bombs, the dirty nukes.
Yeah. That's one thing I don't understand about like Levine's thing. It's like, we got to go after that uranium, because if you take the uranium, then they can't build a dirty bomb. But obviously, if you take away all the backpacks, then they have nowhere to put the dirty bombs.
Yeah.
So, checkmate, Iran. We've got all your Hello Kitty backpacks. Now what?
Now what are you going to do?
Burlap sacks?
Yeah.
No, it's so freaking ludicrous. And, like we were saying before about like how stupid it would be for them to actually try and go after like the Strait of Hormuz and all that stuff. And the last point that I was going to make earlier about, the regime change, taking Strait of Hormuz. The third thing was going to be trying to take the nuclear material, the nuclear stockpile. That seems like the most stupid of all the stupids.
You don't even know where it is.
Because even if you do know where some of it is, you don't know where all of it is.
It's probably not on the coast.
It's probably not on the coast. It's probably under a mountain.
It's probably well protected.
It's probably very well protected.
You're going to drop in on a helicopter or something, probably. The only way to get there will be on a helicopter. You're going to march across Iran, right? You're going to drop in on a helicopter. I'm assuming the helicopter doesn't get shot down on the way to there. Or maybe, maybe not a helicopter, maybe I don't know.
Maybe you just have like 100 troops and a bunch of C-130s and
C-130s
jump out the back. And
Halo jump out of them or something like that. And then you're just going to float down and get shot in the air. I mean, I'm not seeing that. But obviously Mark Levin, as an Israel firster, he only has allegiance to Israel, obviously.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if anyone gets shot down or whatever. He'd just like to see.
But that's like
he'd like to see the US double down, and I think all those Israel firsters want to see more US involvement, especially they want to see boots on the ground, because they know that would be as kind of sunk cost, if you know what I mean, like in the sense of they would find it harder to walk away. The Israelis are terrified. People like him and the Israeli government are terrified that America's going to walk away from this. And they're
thinking, just the tar baby they need.
Yeah, their genius plan is to get America to have lots of dead soldiers in Iran, and therefore will be committed to it. They want a quagmire.
Yeah.
They figure that, or the Iraq quagmire, everybody talks, Trump and Vance and stuff talk negatively about the Iraq quagmire and like the previous Middle Eastern forever wars. But those forever wars, Middle Eastern forever wars and quagmires that the US got involved in were very good for Israel. So Israel does not share that opinion. of no more Middle Eastern forever wars. They want another Middle Eastern forever war. They want an Iraq-style invasion of Iran, which is ridiculous because it's about 4 times the size and 3 times the population, but still just send more troops, right? Send all of them. Send your entire military, all 1.1 million or whatever it is, and the National Guard, and stay there and occupy it and kick doors down and blow up the
full Fallujah
palace
on it
or whatever. Go full Fallujah, yeah. The Israelis would love that, and yeah, who knows what they're willing to do to push America into that, And who knows whether or not Trump will be able to resist it, Trump's just, for his part, that's the Israeli agenda. Trump, for his part, is trying to find a way to achieve some more things, some more objectives, the shifting objectives. He's trying to achieve some of those so he can actually just present a barely coherent justification for calling mission accomplished and backing out of there,
But I don't understand how he thinks he can walk away, or how he thinks all of this is just gonna go away in a certain sense. It's very apparent to me that the Strait of Hormuz is now no longer what it once was. I'm pretty sure that you're gonna have to pay the toll now.
Well, Iran has way more control over it than it had before. That's what they've achieved so far, anyway, is that they've achieved Iran having, because Iran is now already, for at least the last week or more, practiced and trained a certain number of ships, even though it's a small number. They've trained a certain number of tankers from a certain number of countries to actually follow its procedures. They're creating a fact in the ground in a certain sense, and the longer that goes on, it's more like this is now the way it's done. You go slightly north of the traditional shipping lane of Strait of Hormuz, and you come through these between Keshem Island, I think, and another little island where it's only a couple of kilometers across, and we can visually inspect the ships. We can actually board the ships. You have to stop there. You have to confirm where you're coming from, where you're going to, what you've paid in, and that's the way it's going to be done from now on, And that's like a net loss. That's a big net loss for the West, because that wasn't the case before.
No.
Iran wasn't doing that before.
Yeah.
There was free movement of all ships. It was international waters, effectively, and there was no control.
It was free trade.
Yeah,
it was actual free trade.
But through this, it looks like they may have just handed control over the Strait of Hormuz and all ships going in and out of it to Iran. If that's not a loss, I don't know what is.
Which is why I'm at a loss as to how he can walk away from this in any kind of real way.
Well, Trump's good at that.
That isn't worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already worse. Everything's already worse. And I'm pretty sure going forward, it's going to be worse no matter what. I just don't see, I don't see what the least worst option is that doesn't involve significant concessions on the part of the US, because the Iranians have said that they are dictating terms. They are the ones who are going to dictate when this ends. No one else.
And they're not done yet.
And they very clearly have made that their mission.
Yeah.
When they were planning how to structure their army, how to build their bases and all that. It's very obvious that they put a lot of thought and time into this to make sure that everything was in place and robust enough to be able to do exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and they want to. This is their golden opportunity. They're not willing to just have this.
This is their one-time shot.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. Yeah. This is their one-time shot. Just like we were talking about before the actual war, quote unquote, happened. You were talking about how there's so much sunk political capital into this. This is his one shot, and Trump. And the Israelis.
No, but I mean, this is Iran's.
No, and I know, and so what I was going to say was just that, just like how it was Trump and there's one shot to do this, because getting all of the things in place to make it work a second time would be 20 years from now.
Right.
This is Iran's one moment, and it is seizing on that moment.
Because they're not willing. They would rather suffer full onslaught now, in a certain sense, than kind of have it end prematurely in a certain sense, let them regroup and then come back in a few years, or try and work another color revolution or something like that in a few months, or they'd rather have this result in a definitive outcome, let's say, that will be decades, last for decades, basically, and obviously in their favor, or at least in a stalemate, because that's a win for Iran, right? But they basically want this to be resolved now. And that's why they don't want it to be over in a certain sense. We're not done yet because we don't think you have learned enough of a lesson here. Yeah. Like, you've come here
thinking not hurting enough.
Yeah, you've come here thinking that it's going to be a kind of a turkey shoot and you're going to get to dictate terms and sail away, claiming victory. But we're not willing to do that. And Israel has to be taught a lesson. Yeah. Israel has to be put in its place and made realize that whatever it does in the rest of the Middle East, it cannot. It's going to have to. This is, from the Iranian point of view, this has to result in a situation where Israel thinks very, very seriously about ever attacking Iran again in any shape or form.
Where
and by extension, America.
Where the political capital to do anything against Iran is so used up. It's so spent. It's so depleted.
The political risk is so high.
And the political risk is so high that there is no practical that's the real thing, is like, because you're not going to be able to convince these people on a rational level to stop doing it. It has to be visceral. It has to be something so painful that there is no actual realistic practical means of doing it. That's the only way, because otherwise you risk, like you said, them rearming, them getting more weapons in and all that, and then just doing the whole thing over again, and maybe it doesn't work out so well. Because in that sense, if you want to be a bit cynical, this was kind of perfect for Iran, because you killed their leader and a whole bunch of their other leaders, and everyone's on board with being pissed. So, like, this is kind of the perfect chance for them to capitalize on that.
Yeah, for sure. And they, I mean, there's such a lot of bullshit narrative about this. Like, the Israelis need to give up the idea. I'm not sure it's possible, but they need to give up the idea that that Iran is some kind of existential threat to Israel. Iran has only ever its stance, its anti-Israel stance, is because of what Israel has been doing, particularly to the Palestinians. And all Israel had to do to make peace in the Middle East was to get on board with a fair peace settlement that treated Palestinians with equal rights. They never wanted to do that because they want the whole country, all of Palestine for themselves, and Palestinians were a problem. They just wanted to get rid of them. They wanted a final solution, and they used that term on purpose. They wanted a final solution to their Palestinian problem. And that was intolerable. Any country with any conscience in the Middle East, and the leaders of any country with any conscience in the Middle East would have looked at that, and most of them don't. Most of the Gulf states didn't. But Iran did, and say, look, that's intolerable. You can't be doing that, and therefore we're going to be your enemy. We don't like you. You're a bunch of evil, genocide-y type bastards. And the Israelis kind of, conflated that or construed that as, oh, you want to destroy us as a nation, you don't want us to exist here at all. That has never been the Iranian position. The Iranian position is, you need to start acting like a bunch of fucking psycho assholes, and that's within your capability to do it. And then they twisted that into, oh, Iran wants to wipe us out, wants to destroy all of Israel, and therefore they're trying to get a bomb to do precisely that, when that's not the case. The main aggressor in the Middle East has been the US and Israel, and Iran wanted a nuclear bomb for the same reason every other country in the world that has nuclear bombs wanted a nuclear bomb, which was for deterrence, not to use it. No country, with the exception of America, one time or two times, has ever used a nuclear weapon offensively just for the lols. They all acquired them for strategic immunity, in a certain sense, from being attacked. And that's obviously why Iran wants it as well. So the only reason this is happening is because Iran has taken a principled, conscience-based stance against Israeli genocide against the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And all of this is a result of that stance taken. That's why they want to wipe out Iran, because you're not allowed to take a principled, conscience-based stance against genocide, especially when Israel is doing it.
Yeah. You have the, like I was saying before, Iran is very pragmatic. They would have, and if the foreign minister from Oman is to be believed about what they were willing to negotiate as far as, avoiding this conflict, then it's very apparent to me that they would have been very willing to accept very loose terms, very reasonable from a perspective of a reasonable person. A lot of concessions. They would have been willing to make a lot of concessions, not just for the nuclear deal and all that stuff, but just with regards to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was any amount of give from the Israelis, that would have changed the nature of the relationship between Israel and Iran. It's just the fact that Israel has a very hard line, and they are not willing to negotiate on the fact that, no, this is going to be a land for the Jews. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And because they were not willing to negotiate or budge or move or bend that line at all, then you can say that they brought this on themselves.
Of course they did. But that's what victims always do. People with that entrenched victim mentality always do that. Breaking news though on the E3 AWACS. This is from CENTCOM. The US CENTCOM reports that the damage to the 3 AWACS aircraft was caused by a clogged drain pipe from the aircraft's kitchen dishwasher.
Wait, what?
It's a joke. It was posted by the IRB, Islamic Republic.
Broadcasting. Okay.
It's a meme, basically.
I did not see that. I
wouldn't put it, but you were confused because you wouldn't be surprised if CENTCOM actually said that. Yeah, the AWACS aircraft had a kitchen dishwasher, and it got clogged and it exploded, and saw that damage. It just burned half the plane up. It happens all the time. In those, yeah.
Yeah, those kitchenettes.
Yeah,
they're
dangerous things.
Dangerous things.
Anyway, have you got any more else you want to talk about? I think that's just a good wrap up of where we're at, basically. We don't know what's going to happen in the next week, or whether it's going to be boots on the ground or not. But as I said, it's probably not likely not to go anywhere fast. Go nowhere good fast.
Yeah,
and I think they're just Trump is going to at some point going to tackle in a certain sense. He's going to find some way to, or try and find some way to extricate himself from the situation within the next month. And regardless of, and it'll all be bad, basically, for America. They won't have achieved any of their objectives, regardless of what Trump says. Of course, they'll all say that they have, but the reality on the ground would be very different. And the only wild card is what Israel might do in the face of that, of the threat of America backing out when nothing has been achieved. And in fact, you've only emboldened or empowered Iran. Israel might not settle for that, and anything's possible in that respect. Backpack kitty, backpack. Hello Kitty backpack bombs. Who knows? Anything may take it upon themselves just to blow up Iran's South Powers Field or something like that. Anything to keep America involved.
Yeah.
It depends on what they decide on. If they were going to do something like that, it could be there's multiple different things they could do to try but they would pick the thing that would be most likely to try and keep America in the country. But in that situation, you're just creating a problem for America globally, because you're probably going to cause an even worse economic crisis than the one we're already experiencing. And Trump will be put in an even more difficult position, where like, you want to keep me here, but you've just, keep me here to do what? Make the situation worse? Make it even worse than you've already just made it?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
Because they have, Trump loves to talk about the stock market, and, then there's the infamous Pam Bondi, the Dow's over 50,000 statement. So he sees that. That's one of his things. He loves to do things for making sure that the stock market, stays up and always goes up and all that. That's like that's a strategic concern. And if you continue doing this and you keep going into worsening situations and you keep
economically,
what is it? Spending or chasing, spending good money after bad or something like that.
Throwing good money after bad.
Yeah. Doing that kind of thing, which is just going to make the economic situation worse. And on top of that, there's like the very real, difficulties that are currently going on in like India and Bangladesh with their fertilizer plants shutting down because there's not enough LNG, because it's not coming from the Strait of Hormuz, because it's currently closed
by
Iran. And so all of these things are stacking up, and the longer it goes, the more they stack up, and the longer it's going to take for anything to actually, get back to normal, like very much in the COVID sense where, COVID and all the shutdowns and all that stuff. And it took a very long time for things to get back to normal after that. And so the longer this goes on,
the worse it is for America. The worse it is for the global economy and America.
And America by extension.
And America's not insulated against that, to the extent that it thinks it is, let's say. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But that's basically where we're at, I think, at this point. It's kind of relatively quiet this weekend. There's been no typical major event over the weekend that was meant to happen over the weekend while the markets were closed, and then end tonight, basically, just before the markets reopen. Nothing along those lines. And we've got Trump's 10-day extension. Whatever faith you put in that, because they're full of they've broken those multiple times before, but that puts it out to the 6th of April. But at the same time, we have this idea that there's a bunch of Marines on the way or have arrived there or whatever, and what they're going to do. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it's, we really don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know what the future holds in the near future, or even in the long term. So we just have to wait and see and watch things as they transpire, and just just keep watching those signs and watch and I suppose do whatever you need to do to keep your car running, keep food in the fridge or something, just in case that kind of thing balloons out of control. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, so we'll leave it there for this week, folks. We hope you enjoy the show. We'll be back next week, maybe Easter Sunday. Will
Easter,
we?
Ooh, Easter
with Easter eggs. Maybe not. Depends what happens. If it's a quiet week, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll take a little break next weekend. If not, we'll see you then. So until then, or whenever, have a good week, and thanks for watching, listening, and commenting. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye, Kitty.
See you guys.
See ya.
Can't stop the signal now.